Rajeev Rathore, they're saying that the surgical strikes cannot be called a military action. They are instead an anti-terror operation that have in fact taken place in territory that India regards as our own, which is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Let's take those comments, the ramifications of what has happened to our panel. We're joined by former Chief of Army Staff, General Deepak Kapoor, who's also been, of course, former Chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee. Air Chief Marshal Fali Major, the former Chief of Air Staff, is with us. Ambassador K.C. Singh is with us. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, who moved that legislation to declare Pakistan a terror state. Member of Parliament is here. Nalin Kohli of the BJP is here, and Ashok Malik is here. Let me start with you, Air Marshal Major. You said that this was needed. This is something, in fact, you as Air Chief wanted to do after 26/11. It did not happen. The government of the day had a different doctrine. Do you see this as a paradigm shift?
Absolutely. It shows intent, the political will, and most importantly, the aim to put to an end the long harassment of terrorism which this country has had. There is no doubt that what has happened last night across the LOC is a very wonderfully planned and executed operation to take across to Pakistan that our, age-old strategic restraint doctrine is now history, and we mean business. It's as simple as that.
Okay, let me bring in General Kapoor. General Kapoor, you were Army Chief when 26/11 happened. Air Marshal Major was Air Chief. At that time, we are told that you were among those who did not believe that surgical strikes were a viable option. How do you see this decision today, and also for our viewers to explain what are the dangers that come with something as precarious as a surgical strike?
Barkha, let me first begin by complimenting the Indian military for the surgical strikes, very well calculated, very well calibrated, well planned and well executed strikes carried out by them. A surgical strike is based on precise intelligence, specific targeting, and with the aim of causing a specified amount of damage with minimum collateral damage.
Yes.
Which is what the Indian Army was able to achieve in the surgical strikes. Let me also correct your so-called impression of 26/11 that I was against surgical strikes when deliberations took place post 26/11. In fact, that is nothing could be farther than the truth. It is a decision which had to be taken by the government of the day then, and all the ramifications and nuances were made clear by the three service chiefs to them. Finally, the decision rested with the then political leadership. So I would place it at that level.
Yes.
Now, leaving that behind, I'd like to say that there are three main qualitative differences,
Yes.
which I'd like to point out as far as these surgical strikes are concerned. First and foremost, they've been overt in nature, in the sense
Yes.
that we have, having carried them out, told Pakistan as well as the rest of the world that we did this as a counter-terrorist strike against those forces which are causing terrorism within our country and those which are supporting such acts of terrorism.
Yes.
That is point one. Secondly, there is the qualitative difference that till now we did not cross the line of control, the LC as we generally refer to.
Yeah.
Even during the Kargil conflict, we
Did not
maintained
cross.
the sanctity of the LC.
Yes.
It's for the first time we have crossed the line of control and gone ahead and attacked the terrorist camps for where terrorism was being
Pushed in.
launched against
Yes.
us.
Yes.
To that extent, there is a tremendous change.
Yes.
And there is a change, as pointed out by Colonel Rathore earlier, that from a totally defensive posture, we've gone on to a posture of offensive defense. Well, it has also to do with a decision which the political leadership has taken And I think to that extent they are quite right in what they did.
Okay, let me open.
Thirdly,
Yes, complete your point, sir.
in as far as Indian Army is concerned, it's a sea change, and it gives them a free hand to deal with terrorism in the valley in future, and I have no doubt they will continue to perform well whenever such strikes happen.
Okay.
Let me also point out here that there is a direct linkage between what happened post the Burhan Wani incident in the Kashmir Valley,
Yes.
and what the terrorist strike at Uri has meant.
Yes.
You see, having started the unrest in the valley, the Pakistani deep state looked at providing support to what was happening within the valley by carrying out strikes against Indian forces
I would even
along the
say,
line of control.
sir, I would even argue.
It was their way of demonstrating.
May I just briefly interject to say that I would even argue that that the Prime Minister's shift, and maybe Nalin can come in here and Rajeev, came in fact not even in the aftermath of Uri, but when Pakistan began ratcheting up its rhetoric on Burhan Wani, on the unrest, is when we saw a much more aggressive shift there with Baluchistan and so on being brought up. Nalin, would it be fair to say that this is a tectonic shift in doctrine? Because Mr. Modi himself, as one source said...
It is an inflection point.
Yes, it is an inflection point. Go ahead, Nalin.
It's no doubt, it's an inflection point.
Yes.
Because after Uri, it was almost an instant, clear, unequivocal message that this won't go unpunished. That message was there, and if you have to see the chain of events in terms of what happened about in approximately 2 weeks, there was a comprehensive approach, and that's, I think, what you need to see is that so far over the last 7 decades, and we've also argued this on your show and discussed it on your show, not argued, that the government of the day has looked at one option or the other, or a combination of options, but has never tried to look at it in a comprehensive manner. So now it's basically clear that we have a comprehensive relationship, or we'll have a comprehensive response. So the Prime Minister calling for the meetings, what took place with the Defence Minister, the Home Minister, the Finance Minister, the NSA, the Army Chief, all other concerned, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, whatever. All of them. Then you had a review meeting of the Indus Water Treaty. Blood and water can't flow together. Terrorism and cooperation can't go together. So you've had the SARC meeting and those announcements that followed just a couple of days ago. And you've seen now the surgical strikes. But I think the important point which has come out in the interview preceding this discussion, that this is an anti-terror operation. It's an inflection point, that what is important is, here was credible information that after the launch they would come into the country, wreak mayhem not only in Jammu and Kashmir but other parts of the country. So this was a preemptive strike to ensure that they do not wreak mayhem. And I think beyond the political leadership, what needs to be today complimented, saluted, absolutely, is the courage for the successful operation by the armed forces. Absolutely. No collateral damage, casualties at the other end, no body bags, and I think doing it in a manner as before me, the General and the Air Chief Marshal have spoken about. So I think that's important today. That the forces would feel relieved that they've been given a free hand. They've gone and done what they think is correct. And I think it's also India's posture that we are going to not take terrorism lying down. Now Pakistan should live up to its promise that its territory or territory under its control, as per the Lahore Agreement declaration, is going to be made good. So they should welcome it and we should cooperate on it.
I just want to get Rajeev in, and then I want to come to my studio guest. Rajeev, you have been pushing for this legislation. You've sent a copy of it to every single member of parliament to declare Pakistan a terror state. In many ways, actually, the government, we must give it credit, has actually played this fully by the book. You have gone through all your diplomatic options. You have summoned the Pakistan envoy. You have presented him with the evidence. You have explored diplomatic options. You've had the Prime Minister briefing Dr. Manmohan Singh. You've had an all-party meeting. You had Sushma Swaraj briefing Sonia Gandhi. You have had the DGMO to DGMO hotline being used to say, we just conducted surgical strikes. It cannot be called knee-jerk. It is actually very well calibrated. It has been incremental and planned.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there is a person in this country that believes this was knee-jerk. I think our response to Pakistan has, for the first time in several years, been well thought through, measured, and has been successful. At the end of the day, that is the result that we look for. It has put Pakistan on notice that we will open up all kinds of tools that we have, the Indus Water Treaty, the most favored nation status, diplomatic isolation, and the military option. And this is the only language that Pakistan will understand, because for years this doctrine of strategic restraint has led Indians and the Pakistanis to believe that we don't have the capability militarily to respond to Pakistan and its terrorism. And today we have demonstrated not only are we diplomatically capable, not only are we economically capable, we are militarily capable to demonstrate to Pakistan that what they are doing will be resisted and responded to.
Let me bring in now Ambassador K.C. Singh and Ashok. What now? There has been that this is a paradigm shift. You know, you have to agree with it. That it's a departure from how previous governments, including the NDA's own Vajpayee government, responded. It cannot be disputed. Pakistan's denial is also somewhat predictable. They want to locate this as a little more than routine cross LOC firing, but no troops having actually crossed.
I think the two of us, we had some chats with some high-level sources, and now the message that we were getting was that it's what the military did after Myanmar, what the military is doing again. Their messaging was simply say along the line of control. Don't get into this dispute of whether it is across or this side or wherever.
This is important because the Director General of Military Operations' initial words were along the line of control.
That's the same term that military used in case of Myanmar.
But sir,
and you know
when the DGMO, I must share this with you because reporters were confused because he said surgical strikes and he said along the line of control, and we can in fact bring that bite out and play it again if necessary. And then at the end of the briefing, reporters asked him, did you cross? And he said, yes, we crossed. And then Colonel Rathore just very clearly said, we crossed the line of control.
No, it was clear.
Are you saying there's some ambiguity there?
No, because it's a phrase, it's a question of what phrase you are using for the international community. But as far, what is the purpose of this? The purpose is to deter Pakistan, purpose is to deter the Pakistani army, that they don't push militants in, that they don't come and kill us soldiers. They will get the message. You don't need to tell them whether you crossed or you haven't crossed. Now the thing is, for the international community, you maintain a consistent stand. You say that it's along the line, and then the doctrine of preemptive action is there. US is taking preemptive action globally. Interesting thing is, nobody has come to you, not US, not any of the P5, who have come and said, why have you done it or don't do it? Because in the past, whenever you had 2611, etc., partly because or largely because US troops were in the area and they wanted the Pakistani army engaged on the western front, they'll come running to you saying, please don't take any action. So when we compare with previous governments, we should also keep that in mind.
Why is this phrase along the LOC important? Because in the minds of ordinary Indians, this can create confusion. Because
look, they have not gone after the camps. They've gone after the launch sites. Now launch sites are not deep into the Pakistani side. They are along the line of control. So when you say along the line of control, so what do you want? You want sanctity of the line of control. You don't want Pakistani army to be aiding and abetting the pushing of militants through. And you want to basically make sure that they guard their side of the border. So the preemptive doctrine is good. What Rathore is saying is good. He explained it differently. But what he is saying is that if you cannot control that side and there are militants there, then I have a preemptive right to go and stop them before they enter my territory. That's the new doctrine.
Which is what Rathore said, that they were
going to... Which is what he said, but this is the new...
Yet you stick to the phrase along the LOC.
That's all right, because even that is along the LOC. Whether it's on your side along the LOC or their side, you can say what it means is, we are not saying we are going to Muzaffarabad. We are not saying we are going deep into that territory. We are saying it's the sanctity of the line of control. If you do not maintain the sanctity on your side, then we'll come and maintain it.
So you're saying we're not questioning the sanctity of the line of control, but there's but when Colonel Rathore says, but this was our territory, PoK.
No, that is true. I mean, that even
that's a political argument.
Even the PM has said that Gilgit-Baltistan and PoK are officially part of India. That's a separate story. I think the distinction K.C. Singh is making is between a deep incursion into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir across the line of control and a very narrow incursion to preempt people who are trying to cross over.
But according to our reporters who've been briefed unofficially, the army has not said this on record, these incursions did go up to 2 kilometers.
Up to 2 kilometers. Between 500 meters and 2 kilometers. That's what I'm giving you to understand over a vast expanse. There are 2 or 3 things here. One, there have been rumors in the past about incursions across the line of control,
Yes.
including in the Vajpayee years, I remember.
Yes.
They have never officially been accepted. Today they have been quasi-officially accepted, because even when the DGMO said along the line of control, he also said terror launch pads. Now terror launch pads are on the other side of the line of control. So in a sense, they were trying to
It's
finesse.
clear.
Yeah, they were trying
But
to finesse.
it's not like we have gone into
Deep
into
inside.
Pakistan territory and violated their sovereignty. Is that the
Yeah, it's a
emphasis
sort
here?
of-
That this is a preemptive strike to prevent a new terror attack?
A non-invasive surgical strike.
Okay, this
Rather
is a
opposed to an
very
invasive surgical
this is
strike.
a very tactical
Okay,
term.
Barkha, it is
Yeah,
to
okay.
raise the cost. You see, this is a way of telling them, in fact, the phrase being used, which we heard, is low cost, low risk operations. Pakistan Army just starts the firing, opens this thing, and lets the militants come in. So now you raise the cost of it, because they are moved from camps to launch pads. And when you get intelligence, and if they fear that you will attack them at the
They
launch
will move the
pads,
launch pad.
No, that's all right. Then they don't enter your territory, which
Yeah.
means it's not going to be that easy.
I think what we've also done is
Yeah.
changed, there is now a new normal. The new normal is, if you come this close to line of control, we will cross over and hit you if we can.
Okay, so this is there's a nuance, and it's an important nuance, and I want both the former Air Chief and Army Chief to come in on it briefly, and then we'll get more reactions. Air Marshal Major, this nuancing, the DGMO indeed did use the phrase along the line of control. I think Ambassador K.C. Singh and Ashok Malik have also been briefed by high-level sources in the government. So this comes from people who have planned this. There is an emphasis, even as we heard in Colonel Rathor's statement, and perhaps this is what India will tell the world. The Foreign Secretary did meet with 22 foreign envoys today as well, or spoke to them. There is an emphasis here that this is a preemptive strike to stop another terror attack.
Barkha, as a military man, let me put it this way.
Yes.
You know, the diplomats can phrase it any which way they want. But as far as a military strike which happened last night is concerned, whether it's 220 yards away from the LC or 220 kilometers away from the LC, doesn't make a damn difference. The message which has gone out very clearly is that, listen, we know where you insert your terrorists from, and if we find them ever again, we're going to do the same thing to you. So stop sending those guys across. The message is very clear. Now you can put it whichever way you want diplomatically, you know, whether it's nuanced or not nuanced. We've sent a message to the world that we now mean business. And I'm so glad that we did it.
Okay.
And what is more important is that we didn't do it as a knee-jerk reaction, as someone mentioned earlier.
Yeah, me.
It was a whole-of-government approach with excellent intelligence,
Yeah.
with the diplomatic and political moves which were taken before what we did. And that is the message which the world has seen and has accepted, that yes, we went and hit them because they needed to be hit. It's as simple as that. Now, you can put it any which way you want in a fancy language.
I will ask KC and Ashok if it's only about language alone, is it's only a semantics conversation. But General Kapoor, what would have been the difficulty for the Special Forces? I think it's, as a former Army Chief, you can explain that to our viewers. Why would this have been such a precarious operation?
Barkha, having spent about 10 to 12 years in different, almost every rank in Jammu and Kashmir, I can tell you that it is a very difficult terrain, and a terrain which is being monitored from both sides very intensely, and to create gaps through them and through mountainous terrain during the middle of the night and through areas which have limited access is in itself a challenge which the Indian Army Forces met very creditably.
Yes.
And having got there to totally surprise the terrorists and the launch pads completely and cause casualties and destruction of a sizable amount, and then ensure that they got back safe and sound without having a casualty, that in itself is a tremendous credit, especially in view of the fact that since the Uri incident, the Pakis are claiming to be extremely alert on the line of control,
Yes.
where all sorts of practices and drills and rehearsals have been carried out.
Right.
I also want to add a couple of things as far as the initial aspect where you cut me short. Firstly is that by doing what they did at Uri, the Pakistani deep state were also trying to create a situation where, in addition to what is happening within the valley, they were trying to depict a picture of total chaos and
Yes.
mayhem
Yes.
within the valley, therefore inviting international attention.
Yes.
And the other qualitative difference in these surgical strikes has been that the military, the diplomacy and the economic power of the country
Yes.
have been used very synergistically this time.
I think that's something
As
we
a
all
result,
agree on. I think that is
It
something
has
that
brought about optimization of the results.
Yes. And, let me bring in Nalin and Rajeev. Rajeev,
And the last point that I wish to make,
yes. Yes, sir.
the last point that I wish to make is that this so-called deniability, well, they've denied, the Pakistan side has denied everything from the word go, whether it was 26/11, which was initially denied, whether it was Pathankot, or even this Uri incident, or even Kargil for that matter.
Yes, in
You are fully
Kargil,
aware
of course,
that.
they didn't even take back the bodies of their own soldiers. Now, briefly, Rajeev and Nalin. Nalin, for any government, you have to weigh in the potential danger of what you could call escalatory warfare. A country would want to contain this at this level, which is why I think it's so important what Ashok and Ambassador K.C. Singh have said, that this is preemptive to stop a terror strike, right? This is not a declaration of war, and I think that those distinctions are very important this evening. Nalin, I'll start with you and then Rajeev.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think even I pointed out that clearly, that this was a preemptive terrorist strike. That's what the government is saying. That's what everyone is saying.
Yes.
This is not a declaration of war against Pakistan. This is just about us protecting ourselves against terror, and this is something that we should also get to. The second point is that in terms of economic might and all that you're saying, that will be part of the comprehensive approach that we are looking at it. But what's important today is, adding to General Deepak's what you call comment in terms of Pakistan denying. I mean, today the other thing is, which is very apparent, Pakistan is not finding any takers for the kind of story that it has been churning out, or the spiel that it's been working on for decades. I mean, they don't have a story. They just don't have anything to be able to stand on. And I think, their hypocrisy is exposed. So I think at such a point, when we've done it in a very calibrated way, as you've said, and that calibrated way includes the response of all political parties, we must bring it on the table, we must acknowledge every political party, before the briefing, after the briefing with the Prime Minister, have come out there and stood firmly behind our armed forces. And that's, I think, the most important thing, heartening for the armed forces. When they go out there, when we are sleeping, no one's bickering about it. Everyone is saying we are standing there. And I think from an armed force perspective, there's no such thing as an ex-soldier. Soldier's a soldier at heart till he dies. So I mean, those who sit on this panel, those who watch it, those who have stood on the panel, or those who are fighting on the ground, all of them have this one uniform thing, that yes, we are being backed completely for what we think is correct in the interest of the country.
Rajeev, let's bring you in there. I think that is a very important shift that we do need to talk about. We were told from the beginning that forces would be given a free hand, and both the former Air Chief and Army Chief have identified that as a major shift internally. I think that matters too.
No, I completely agree, and I said it at the top of the program, Barka, that the last 10 years or 12 years of the strategic restraint has led many people to believe that the Indian Armed Forces did not have this capability. And it was very important for the Prime Minister to give the army a free ride, free rein, and say, go do your thing. And the army has proven today that it has not just the capability, it has the capability for surgical strikes, very precision, with minimum collateral damage and minimum damage to itself. So the armed forces today have made us proud, made us more confident about our ability to handle these terrorist strikes and this terrorism threat, which for many, many years we were at a loss and scratching our head to try and figure out how we could handle this. So it is a very defining moment in more ways than one. As a nation, we have become more confident today about our ability to handle Pakistan economically, diplomatically and militarily. And it is no small achievement, in my opinion, and the armed forces have a lot to do with that.
Okay, I just want to take last
Barka,
comments
may
here.
I add one small point, please?
Yes, Marshal, yes.
Barka,
Yes.
one small point about deniability.
Yes.
If you go back a few years, I think, I don't remember the correct year, I think it was 2003, 2004. If you remember, we shut down the Pakistani Atlantic in somewhere near Jamnagar, Gujarat.
99,
yeah.
2004.
And those photographs were put all over the world.
Yeah.
That this is what we did. And I'm quite sure that if, to avoid this deniability from Pakistan, if we were to put all the action photographs which have been taken by our special forces or, UAVs or other electronic means, it should be shown to the world that yes, we did it. And that, I think, is very important.
Now, this is a very critical point that I want to take to you, Ashok, because we have been told in our briefings that the military certainly has the evidence, and Pakistan's denial is also to duck escalation. But
yeah, as a
so
face
do
saver.
we, as a face saver.
I'm pretty sure there is evidence, but the evidence, if it's released, will also establish that we crossed the line of control. So the government may choose to do it at a time of its choosing.
But we're not denying that we crossed the line of control.
Well,
we have Colonel Rathore saying it on
Rathore is not
record.
denying it. The rest of the government is trying to finesse it. That's a separate issue. I think there are 2 points here. One, escalation was mentioned. I think the Indian strategic establishment with this government, there's been one major shift. There's a belief that after every attack, there's been fear of that if you strike back, there'll be escalation. So that's caused us to do almost nothing. This government seems to believe that the escalation bogey can be tackled, that the ceiling for escalation is actually a bit higher. So you can act a bit, you can take some steps without escalation actually happening. And if Pakistan does not respond by really escalating the war, or the battle, not the war, then perhaps that theory would be proved correct. So maybe the escalation bogey has been, in a sense, challenged.
There's one phone call we need to talk about. And Ambassador Casey is saying at 7 a.m. this morning, Susan Rice speaks to Ajit Doval. This operation ends by all accounts at 4:30 a.m. We do not know if this is in response. We do not know who calls whom. We are told that Susan Rice calls Mr. Doval. That's what we know so far. Of course, when that statement is released, we know nothing about these strikes. Is there now going to be that kind of world pressure to contain this at the level at which it's happened? You're saying no?
Yeah. I think the whole diplomatic situation between 2008 or 2001 and today is very different. Pakistan is frankly in the doghouse today. And therefore the restraint on India internationally, we have to acknowledge that, is much lower than it was.
I'm just trying to understand where we go from here.
Yeah, you see the strategy, the recalibration of Pakistan policy is in
But
three parts.
I'd like to add a point.
Yeah.
There is a bilateral pressure that you're trying to build through Indus Water Treaty, various things. You're trying to isolate them regionally, that's where SAARC comes in, and 3 countries and almost 4 countries, that's more than half the membership of SAARC, joins you in boycotting. It's unheard of. We've never had that kind of regional support. And then you do it internationally, which is on human rights and different things. But the fact that the Americans called is not surprising. Don't forget that their general had come from Afghanistan saying give arms to Afghanistan, which they never said over the last 15 years since 2001.
So where do you think we go from here?
They killed Mullah Mansoor
yes.
with a drone. The Americans have changed because A, their dependence on Pakistan is no longer there. And secondly, I think they're sick and tired. What they're saying is the mood in Washington across the board is they're sick and tired.
So where do we go from here? With this
finessing
that the government has attempted, but now you have a minister on record saying we crossed.
What I'm saying is that we should keep the rhetoric down as the Prime Minister did, because it's important to have a face saver for the Pakistani army. You've conveyed the message to them.
And you're saying don't provoke them to escalate now.
No, because
is that what you're saying?
If you go on provoking, then that is not, you've cancelled the leave of your people, you have pulled them, pulled the civilians back. Now you're sending a signal to Pakistan, do not take action. We are ready for it.
Ashok and then General Kapoor, 30 seconds.
But that doesn't mean you poke their eye.
The very fact that they've called it a counter-terrorist operation, which is what it is, rather than a military operation, tells you that the government is offering the Pakistani military a bit of a face saver and saying, look, we are not here to invade you, we are here to...
So you don't agree with Fali Major that it doesn't matter what you call it?
Well, diplomats, politicians and generals would all call it different things.
General Kapoor, 30 seconds, sir. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. Last word to you, sir.
I wanted just a quick comment on that.
I'd like to put in, contrary to a number of views which have been expressed on this issue, that a degree of retaliation you may expect from the Pakistan army, if only that they wish to prove their credentials to their internal population.
Yes.
You recall that they have not gone back on Siachen to even tell their own population that they have been thrown out of
and
Siachen.
That's why...
So to that extent, purely for domestic
consumption.
So there is likely to be some kind of retaliation, maybe along some of our more vulnerable posts, for which I think the Indian Army is fully prepared and ready to take any action in defense to ensure their sanctity.
I do have to close, but I'm seeing two hands go up. Nalin and then Emma.
Barka, one small word from
Yes.
what General Kapoor just said.
Yes.
Yes, the armed forces are absolutely prepared and ready for any kind of retaliation. My little piece of advice is that keep the hinterland more prepared than the armed forces.
That's really an important point, and I actually agree with it. Nalin, you wanted a sentence in, and I really do have to close.
Yeah, just two short comments.
Yes.
One is that, you know, the stark difference is there, since we are talking in terms of the armed forces. Here's an armed force, an army, that is under the constitution, respects it. On the other side, there's an army that's an extra constitutional authority and has always been. And the second thing is, some people talk of a soft state, hard state. I think what today we've gone out and shown is, we are a mature, even a compassionate, but not a weak democracy. And that's, I think, the message that we've sent out globally.
And yet, I'm hearing both of you say we want to contain it here. And we
Not contain it, we've sent a message.
and now,
And don't provoke, there's no need for chest thumping.
It is,
message
it is
has gone.
preemptive. It is not an invasion of Pakistan or something. It's preemptive at our doorstep.
yeah, we leave it there. We will continue to keep an eye on this story. Thanking our panel tonight. We will see you later tonight as well. This program will broadcast again in a little while from now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.